Welcome to our show, and our today's guest is a thought leader, author, podcaster, dedicated mentor, speaker, guest lecturer, and a panelist. Her passion to guide, inspire, and direct future leaders and industry professionals to construct their career led to her founding the successful platform, The Construction Coach. She has been featured in Yahoo Finance, Australian National Construction Review, Property Council of Australia's Top 500 Women in Property Program 2019, and Top 100 Women in Construction, and is frequently a guest speaker. And we feel amazing to have you on the show. And she's none other than Elinor Moshe. How are you feeling today?
I'm excellent, and thank you very much for a very warm introduction. It's fantastic to be on the other side of the microphone today.
Yeah, amazing. So tell us about how did you become what you are today, and what was the journey like for you?
A very good question. Thank you for asking. Well, as you did say, I am a thought leader in the construction industry, and my business, The Construction Coach, is Australia's first construction coach. And I'm also the author of my book, #1 bestseller, Constructing Your Career, and host of the industry-leading podcast, Constructing You. And, when you look at this with all the features, it seems like it's always been this case for me, but it certainly hasn't been that way. I got to a point in my career where I felt extremely dissatisfied and very unfulfilled. I remember going into work one day and thinking, this can't be it. For the next 40, 50 years of my career, there had to be more. And I didn't know what more looked like, because when you work in a conventional career and you go through conventional systems, the worldview and what people show you as possible is very, very limited. And for a very long time, I started working on my own inner vision as well. I started, at the same time I was, progressing through my career, people were seeing it as being successful, but I was working through my own vision. And I started seeing that there was a mismatch between where I thought I was going and what my vision was actually leaning me towards and pulling me towards. So two things were happening at the same time, and that path merged when I met my mentor, Ron Malhotra. And I started working with Ron in August of 2019, and he showed me what the third path of having a career could look like. And that is the thought leadership model of entrepreneurship, which is built around being all of who I am, and which is in total alignment to what I love doing. And that's speaking, mentoring, writing, and teaching. So I went down the thought leadership path, and to be able to do that in an industry which it really hasn't been done before, certainly not in Australia to the extent that I have, in such a congruent and authentic way, and to come out from literal obscurity was, certainly has its challenges, but the highs were very, very high and the lows were very, very low. But I have grown tremendously as a person in the last 2 years alone, more than I had in the entirety of what was my 20s. And it's led me to where I am today. But above all, I realize that my vision is larger than me. I'm just a conduit for my vision to pass through, because what we're really here to do is transform and impact the lives of people who come into our world. And that is above all why I love doing what I do.
Amazing. I love this story. So one thing that you mentioned, you went to the path of thought leadership. So how do you clearly define thought leadership? What is thought leadership for you?
That's a good question, because there are many experts who have never even stepped into the thought leadership world, but they're more than happy to provide commentary as to what thought leaders, entrepreneurs, what they all look like. Everyone's an expert in something, right? But fundamentally, a thought leader is known for what they know, because what they know makes a difference. We rely on, and we are known for, our distinctive thinking. We aren't conventional in our thinking, in our approaches, and it is really the level of profound insight and wisdom that we are able to take people on a journey through, which creates that transformation.
Yeah, interesting. So I have to explore more about thought leadership. Like I'm not like very familiar with this thing. So though I'm familiar, but like not very deeply. So like
Yeah, well,
I'm
convention
yeah, go ahead.
conventional entrepreneurship is where you have a product or a service at the center of the business, and then that product or service gets recognized. So it takes time for the founder, the brains behind the business, to actually get recognized. But in the thought leadership model, that is actually flipped on its head, where first the person, the individual, what they are known for and who they are put out front and center, and then their brand assets, their business, everything that they produce is an extension of their brand. And this really facilitates that human connection because people first buy into a person and then they will buy into a product, especially when it is one that is intangible.
Yeah, that's a really good definition of thought leadership. So so now what is like let's say the good side or and like pros and cons of having a normal entrepreneurial like business or let's say entrepreneurial business and thought leadership business. So what's the pros and cons?
It, even if someone does have a traditional model of entrepreneurship, if they have a product or a service, they still need the advantage of being able to position themselves as the go-to, as the authority in the marketplace, because otherwise you're just relying on people to get to know the product. But again, you could really maximize the opportunity in a marketplace by positioning yourself as the brains, as the entrepreneur, as a leader behind this venture. There are really no disadvantages to it. But what the thought leadership model affords, whether you are traditional or otherwise, is a high level of differentiation. What I do, people may replicate the name of my book, they may replicate my brand colors, but what they will never be able to replicate is the total mix, the unique blend that only I have. And because I know what that is, I can put that out there. And that's what creates very unique branding and positioning. That's what creates magnetic branding and positioning. And regardless if you have an intangible or a tangible product or service, that's required because the market is intensely diluted at the moment. And how does a consumer actually make a decision as to whether they want to buy, whether they want to invest in this product or this course? People make decisions based on people. And when the founder is actually putting themselves out there, it allows for their brand to be communicated and for people to clearly know, yes, this is for me, or this really isn't for me and I need to go elsewhere. But what it also does, it doesn't, with people in your community, you don't have a passive or relationship with people. It's quite active because you're putting a lot of yourself out there and people really get to know you to the core of who you are, and the impact and the depth of relationships that are afforded because of why we do what we do. You simply do not get that in any other line of business.
Interesting, very interesting. So it's about extra differentiation in this like very crowded market. And that's all also about, and we are able to build deeper relationship because of thought leadership.
That's right. And it also demonstrates and positions you as the authority. I mean, how many coaches are there in the marketplace? Thousands in anything. I remember when I first started looking at the coaching market and discovering this world, there was a coach on how to pickle vegetables. There's actually a coach for that. There is a coach for absolutely everything. But they're all the same. I'm a money mindset coach. I'm a money mindset coach. I'm a mindset coach. I'm a career coach. They're all just the same thing. They're all doing the same thing and they're all not differentiating themselves. But there is only one construction coach and I'm also the first. That cannot be beaten. So when you have that level of differentiation, it just aids people in your world to make an informed decision if you are the right fit for them.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, like construction, like why did you actually selected this industry specifically? So like what potential did you actually see in it?
I think the industry chose me. I initially went into architecture And I went in thinking that I would be a grandiose architect that would design things and, that it would be fantastic. And that dream very quickly came crashing down because I also started to realize that I'm a creative, but not in that typical sense. But I also love process and structure. And as I was going through my architecture degree, I was continuously wondering, how is this built? How much does this cost? What are the people? How does this actually go together? That's what, struck my curiosity in the first instance. And that's what drew me towards pursuing higher education in construction management. And I fell in love with the industry all at once. I found it to be both highly overwhelming, very engaging, really stimulating. And I started seeing the opportunities that were available. But at the same time, whilst there were conventional opportunities, I was always drawn to doing more in the industry. I was never just a 9 to 5, I go to work and I'm happy doing that. I was always looking for ways to contribute. I was always looking at ways to start something up or be part of something. And that's what started growing my visibility. But at the same time, I also was never one that fitted in, not into any construction cliche. I always stood out. And that's always been a trend with me. Anywhere that I go, I am always a lone wolf. I don't fit in. So I think the industry more chose me because the industry needed what it is that I do. It's a breath of fresh air. It's a whole different perspective. And when I started on that thought leadership path, I of course looked at what everyone else was already doing, what the conversations are already like, and I found a micro niche in a micro niche for me to really specialize in and demonstrate my authority and my expertise in that, which is looking at the people behind the projects, because a lot, majority of the construction management discourse is about the projects and about things that are very technical in their nature. But no one's talking about the evolution of and the transformation of the individual. And they're certainly not talking about the hidden elements that are required to achieve a massive career success. So in a way, it was always meant to be.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. So like one thing that you said that you selected a niche like a micro niche in a micro niche. Like that's how you selected. So like where weren't you afraid to select such small niche?
Absolutely, because when you at first look at what other people do, well, what do? They go broad and they're wide and they try to be something for everyone. And yes, at first when I started, that was my exact strategy. And I am grateful until the end of time that I met my mentor who showed me how to actually target, how to actually build an audience that is receptive to what you want, but are also the type of people that your solution would add the most benefit to. So, yes, at first it was, we do have this programming, which is of a lack, thinking there won't be enough, but that's just the wrong energy and the wrong mentality. And I'm so glad that I have a very narrow focus as to who I serve and how I serve them.
Yeah, yeah. So it slowly became the thing. Okay. So and the thing that came to my mind is like when you mentioned that you were the first construction coach, and so when you're the first in anything, uh, it often leads that people are not able to relate to that, like what is it. So like were you able to relate to people, like how did you relate to people, like let's say your target customers or like target clients. So what did you do to relate with them?
That's a very good question. And in the thought leadership world, our commercialization or clients, that comes last because we spend a lot of time, first of all, building our own awareness and our own presence in the marketplace. But we do that by adding a lot of value to people. So, for example, content. I was putting out content for a very long time before I had people start to inquire about mentoring and whatnot. So that is one way in which we first serve people. We don't expect anything in return. No one owes me anything, but we operate out of a place of giving. But what I also started doing was before COVID, of course, I had the opportunity to do some events. And when you put on certain events, the type of person that comes to you, start to really listen to what they're saying and what their problems are. And that's why being in conversation with many people and understanding what are their pain points is important, but also look back into my own career. What it is that I struggled with, what it is that I wish I had someone to just hold up a mirror and tell me, Elinor, this is what you need to know. This is your path of, least resistance to the greatest amount of success. So it's about having a hypersensitivity as to what the people are really experiencing in the industry and getting really familiar and being very appreciative of the individual and what it is that they're going through and what it is that they really want to achieve. When you start to capture all of this and in a way you put it in a blender, you do start to come up with solutions that the industry needs.
Yeah. So it's all about listening to the market, or like the target market basically, and creating solutions or contents based on their suggestion or like their requirement.
Not so much their suggestion or requirement, because that assumes that people know what they need and people know exactly what they want. And no, they don't. But so in order to position them, to be a thought leader, we can only lead from a higher consciousness. So it's showing people a different future, a different way in which things can look at. Because if we were to only reflect what other people want right now, that would just keep them on the same level. And that's doing a disservice to people. So it is about listening to what they're saying, but it's also then leading them from a higher consciousness, because you can't lead someone on the same consciousness as you.
Yeah, so you actually mentioned a really amazing thing, which is basically seeing from a higher angle that what the problem is. Because if we stay on the same place, we are not gonna improve. Like, how are we gonna improve if we're not seeing the future? And now, like, what challenges did you saw during, like, let's say, when you starting out, when you were starting in this industry, versus what are the current challenges?
The challenges that I started off with are still very dominant. And, one of them is that when you go through conventional types of systems in the industry, you get a very narrow worldview as to what is possible. And that is to be a project manager. That is seen to be the end all to your career in the industry. But when people are just striving to something that is quite, low and elementary, they're missing out on a lot of opportunity, and they're not actually realizing that there is so much more impact. There is so much more that I can achieve within the industry, because the construction industry really is flux with so much fantastic opportunity. You can create literally anything that you want, both tangibly and intangibly, where, people are builders, people know what it takes to get something off the ground. So there were many issues in how conventional career intelligence has really permeated the industry. And a lot of people subscribe to this conventional career intelligence. And what it does is ensures that they leave opportunity on the table. And this is relevant at every single stage, from those who want to enter into the industry, from mid-level professionals, even to senior professionals. Conventional career intelligence has extreme limitations. But in terms of challenges right now, well, COVID has really demonstrated that a lot of people in the industry, they're not prepared for when times are not fantastic. Because in Australia, the industry has been pretty good for the last 30 years. Most people haven't actually had much adversity in their careers compared to other people in other companies and other economic conditions. This is probably the first time in many people's careers where they find themselves exposed. They're not prepared for the marketplace. They're not actually prepared to capitalize on any opportunities. And they're also not mentally resilient in order to play out last other people in the industry so they can move forward, so they can achieve more. So this isn't COVID's fault. COVID has just brought this to light. And what we're going to see is that some people are right now really trying really hard to secure their career, to provide a safety net, quite frankly, because these types of pandemics, they will continuously happen, but majority of people are going to find themselves really awakened that in their career that they're not ready. And those who are complacent and those that are lax in their career, as I said, are going to have a really big shock in the next few years.
Okay. So what, like you mentioned that in a few years. So what might happen in the next few years?
Well, the effects of COVID are yet to be realized. So there's always, construction is a lagging indicator. So what we just experienced and are still somewhat experiencing, the full effect, we don't know what that will be like yet, because we didn't just go through an economic impact. We went through a type of pandemic which impacted, it was a human condition. It impacted everything. It wasn't just fiscally or economically. So we're yet to see how this is actually going to play out. But what we already saw is that, companies go through redundancies. The people that thought that they could just rely on their experience and their technical nature to save them, it hasn't saved them. So people aren't even building the right mindset and the right skill set in order to continue having a fulfilling career. And of course, this just has flow-on effects for the individual.
Okay, understandable. So now, so now at this moment, so how are you helping the market, or like how are you helping people to overcome these challenges?
That's a good question. So my services and mentoring are available for people at different levels of the industry. So I have my program for future leaders, Constructing Your Career, which allows them to stop being invisible to the marketplace, but also understand how the industry works and really become confident constructors of their own career. I also have a mid-level program, Magnify Your Construction Career, which I do in collaboration with my mentor, Ron Malhotra. And that is for people who are at that mid management type of level, and they want to really position themselves as leaders within their organization, within the industry. And they want to learn how to generate deep and meaningful impact and influence within their own ambitions and their own vision. And then again, through collaboration with Ron, I also do thought leadership mentoring, which is what I have done. So allowing professionals and executives to position themselves as a go-to authority as to something that they are really passionate about. And they can become entrepreneurs, so do that within an organization, or they can choose to start scaling out and become the thought leadership type of entrepreneur.
Okay, that's amazing. So can you share some examples that whom you have helped, also not whom, but the results have that you made?
One of the best types of feedback, I mean, what we do is extremely rewarding because you're able to provide so much value and transformation to someone who, they took a chance and they said, you know what, I'm going to work with you. I'm going to invest my time and money and I'm going to actually work with you. And I find that to be such a huge privilege and an honor that someone has selected me to be their mentor. And it was on the back of one of my masterminds. My team asked for feedback and one of my clients said, look, I'll get it to you. And what I got was a one-page letter. This is the first time in a very, very long time which someone just sat down and wrote such a heartfelt, moving letter as to all the different specific ways in which he transformed, in which he doesn't recognize himself from 6 months ago, and that he's awakened, in that he's so much more positive, he's in better shape physically and mentally, in that he's so invigorated for his life. For the first time, he's excited. And this went on for a page. And to get something like that because of what we do would have to be the most important, the most rewarding aspect of what we do. Yes, of course, people achieve tangible outcomes such as, clarity in their career, clarity in their person. What I also work with is to actually get them into industry so they attain employment, sometimes for the first time. When it's at that mid-level, then they start getting all these opportunities that are typically reserved for other people, but not them. in the organization. So there's the tangible rewards that come with what we do, but there's also the huge emotional and tangible benefit. And when you're able to generate both for people, it's quite the unparalleled experience.
Amazing, amazing, truly amazing. So, like, what was the feeling when you read the letter?
I realized that I could not be where I needed to be anymore. Not that I have any doubt, but we do have doubt. Sometimes we look and like, is this what I'm really meant to be doing, or am I going down the right track? And then you get something like this, and it just provides, more confirmation than ever before, and it just shows, this is why it's worth everything. Because in no other profession, not as a doctor, not as a lawyer, not as anything, do you get such feedback other than the thought leadership, where you really get to the heart of a person.
Yeah, true, very true. So now, so what future do you see? Like, let's say, what vision do you see in the next for 5, 10 years for yourself and this industry?
I would love to know that my vision for the industry, in which everyone creates their own success starting from the inside out, and that they construct their own exceptional future, and that they won't be, that they won't succumb to conventional career intelligence, and that they actually realize how powerful and how much potential they actually are. Would I love that to change in my lifetime? Absolutely. Will it? Absolutely not, because human nature hasn't actually changed for the last 3,000 years. So the mission is always going to be to impact and reach as many people as possible, to show them what is possible, and to allow them to have full agency over their career. And if everyone does that, if everyone worked on both their mindset and their skill set, the industry would not have the types of problems that it does. Because if you look at the construction industry, what is an industry? An industry is a sum of its parts. What are the parts? The parts are the people. So if everyone looked after their mindset, their skill set, their heart set, their soul set, would the industry have such high levels of burnout, of dissatisfaction, of people leaving the industry, of inequality? Would any of that really be prevalent? Absolutely not. It wouldn't even be a consideration. So
No.
would I love to change in my lifetime? Absolutely. But that's why I'm all the more driven to leave that legacy, that even, one day I will not be around, that it will still instigate someone to actually take full ownership of their career and work on what is their greatest project that they will ever get to work on. And that is, of course, themselves. 5 to 10 years for my life, I never thought that I would be here in less than 2 years. But the next 5 or 10 years is going to look like a global mission for me. And I know that it's just going to be insanely more of what I am doing. And of course, looking forward to so many more collaborations and opportunities, and creating my own opportunities and doing what I highly encourage others to do, which is to construct my own exceptional future. So I have been looking forward to the 20s my whole life, and 2020 was a fabulous year for me. Despite everything that was happening in the world, I always knew that this is going to be a roaring decade. I've been looking forward to it all my life, and now it's here. So the mission is going to be to impact and work with as many people as possible.
Interesting. So, how was it like a very amazing year for you? Like 2020, how was it a really great year for you?
It started, I was overseas, and it was beautiful to have that time to connect with family. But above all, I connected with myself, because I was only 3 or 4 months into my own mentoring journey, and going away and disconnecting really allowed me to connect with a side of myself that I've been so actively suppressing. So that was a very important turning point in what I do as well. But last year, I had an event in the workshop just before COVID struck, which was fantastic. But as soon as COVID struck, I launched my podcast, Constructing You, which is, an industry leading podcast and imminently ticking over 50,000 downloads. And I launched it on the same weekend that we went into lockdown, which was fantastically timed. People didn't have anything to do, so they listened to my podcast. And being able to deliver my podcast, I absolutely love, because I bring conversations that are otherwise not publicly available. And when people again see how these exemplary leaders and industry titans constructed their own career, and they didn't come from anything magnificent, but they had to become a certain type of person, again, it shows people what they can achieve for their career. So, the opportunities that it's afforded both, of course, myself, but people listening, has been incredibly rewarding. And I also launched my book last year, which was one of the best days, 14th of August last year, that I got to experience. And of course, the feedback loop and the opportunities that have come from that has been fantastic. But last year I also started giving, legs to my business, started working with clients and launching new offerings and collaborations and speaking and podcasts. It was fantastic. It was just a phenomenally rewarding year. And despite everything that was happening, I was a little bit sad to see it go, because I was on such a fantastic run, but I welcomed 2021 with open arms, and it's been nothing but brilliant since.
Great, great, really, really great. So like, why did you like I really loved what you said, and you mentioned that you launched your book, your first book, I guess. So why did you wrote it, and what did you aim to get out of it?
As much as I would love to have the opportunity to work with every single person in the construction industry, I won't. And it took me 7 years to piece together the principles, the insights, and the wisdom that I needed to have a successful career. It took that long. So I wanted to write a book that would be someone's mentor. It would be their friend, and it would be their guide when when they maybe not won't have someone. And the point of the book was to, it's written in a way that this is how you build a building, and this is how you also build your career. And the subtitle is The 12 Foundational Stages on the Greatest Project That You Will Ever Get to Work On, because my intention is to flip the focus, not on projects that are external to ourselves, but to flip the to flip the focus onto what do I want out of my career in this industry, and to not build it on externalities, and also not to build it on conventional career intelligence, because it does ensure that people leave opportunity on the table, but it's also not holistic. It's also very tactical in its nature. So I really wanted to dispel a lot of the myths that are associated with the industry, but also to give people that in as to this is what it's like working in the industry, because it's a very fragmented industry. It has a lot of challenges, yet people are making career decisions without any context. And they're not actually able to see this higher picture of what the industry looks like and then build their career around that. They do it the other way around. So the book is still in its infancy, and also working towards making sure that it gets into as many hands as possible.
Great, really great. So you was giving the people you are not able to help personally the high angle, or like the higher overview through your book.
That's right. And if people were even to implement what's in the book, they will have a far more rewarding career, and one that is not spent being mediocre and average, because even though that's not what people consciously sign up for, that's what they're representing.
Yeah, okay. So we are almost at the end. So like, what's learning and education to you?
Everything. The minute if someone stops learning, then they're actually going backwards. There's no such thing as to stop learning. And learning is certainly not about going back to university or going back to get another degree. Absolutely not. That's technical learning, and that only accounts for a very small percentage of your career success. But if you don't actually stop learning, and even learning so much about yourself, why are you having a human experience?
True, very true. I agree with that. So any last word that you'd love to share with our listeners?
If you have an ambition and you have something that you want to achieve, take immediate and massive action to do that, because time waits for no one, and dreams certainly, they die, because opportunity will not hang around forever.
Amazing. So where can our listeners find you online?
If your listeners would love to connect for more unconventional career and life intelligence and insight, then they can connect with me on Instagram. I'm at Elinor Moshe _. I'm on LinkedIn, Elinor Moshe. My website is elinormoshe.com and theconstructioncoach.com.au.
Amazing. So we will put all the links with the descriptions of the podcast as well. So I think like people will get extra help with that. And thanks for coming on the show. Like I really appreciated it. Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.